So what's going on? Like, the working class is not catching up with the Young Turks. They're catching up with Trump. Their first step into the United States literally was criminal because they're illegal immigrants.
Yeah, no, and they go, oh my God, look at all these criminals. Can you not see how that's demagoguery?
Maybe I'm an anti-intellectual here, but I listen to that fact and I'm like, yeah, I don't buy it, and also I don't care.
I don't want any criminals in here. I want to kick them out. I don't like criminal gangs taking over apartment.
Welcome back to Rattlesnake TV, guys. In this video, we are going to be watching Cenk Uygur get absolutely schooled. Now, the libs are panicking at the moment. So Cenk Uygur, I mean, credit to him, has gotten a bunch of different MAGA Republicans on his show to debate. I mean, not all liberals are willing to do that. And they got a bunch of different MAGA people on. And this interview that we're going to cover, I wasn't expecting much from it. And this kid impressed me the most out of everyone because he came along and just absolutely dog-walked Cenk. I didn't know who he was before this, but his name's JP. He is a writer at The Spectator, and he makes some fantastic points here, which we're going to elaborate on. So we'll get into the opening statement now, which is strong and also very funny because I'm pretty sure he calls Cenk Mr. Yogurt. So with that, let's get into it.
JP Villesmell is a reporter at The Spectator, and he's a constitutional studies fellow at the American Conservative. Fun. Okay, JP, thanks for coming on. Tell me why you want to vote for Donald Trump.
Mr. Yogurt, thank you for having me.
No problem.
I'm going to be honest. I enjoy seeing all the other debates, but I think we're missing some aura here, and we need to push back a little more. You keep referencing that Trump's a wannabe dictator. He wants to terminate the Constitution. You even referenced the fact that Trump said there's good people on both sides. And even Anna Kasparian agrees with me here. If you're going to attack Trump, you got to attack him with real facts. And the real facts, in my opinion, is that if you're a working class American, you should favor Trump. Reality is that most billionaires that you consistently trash support Kamala Harris. Reality is that if you're a billionaire and you're not America first, tariffs hurt you much more than domestic deregulation. Reality is that most working class Americans remember the Trump years. Reality is that when you look at poll after poll, Trump is winning with Hispanic Americans. There's a plus 21% increase from 2016 to 2024. Actually, he's leading with Arab Americans. He's leading with Teamsters. 65% of Teamsters members support Trump. So the Young Turks, all of you guys love the working class, and I do too. So what's going on? Like, the working class is not catching up with the Young Turks. They're catching up with Trump.
Okay, so a bunch of things there. First of all, Anna does not agree with anything you just said there, other than she says on the both sides comment, he did later say that he's against white supremacists. So I say that's plausible deniability. I don't think there was any good people on that pro-Nazi, pro-Confederate side. But we can agree to disagree on that. Okay, now in terms of supporting billionaires, Donald Trump is pretty famously supporting Elon Musk, richest man in the world, also very much supporting, and he says it in all these cases, Sheldon and Miriam Adelson. They gave him a combined about $300 million in the 3 races that he did. He says, well, I like their money, so I'm gonna do whatever they want. So he moved our embassy in Israel because Sheldon Adelson asked him to. He made corruption charges against him go away with a minimal fine when he had apparently bribed people in China. And the list goes on and on of all the corrupt things that he wants to do in favor of billionaires. So yeah, I don't see how he's any better there. Yeah, the Teamsters members, hold on. And the last thing on that, just out of the things that you mentioned, the Teamster members are slightly on Trump's side. I see that. I love the Teamsters, and I praise Sean O'Brien's speech a lot at the RNC. I thought it was the best speech out of both conventions. But on the other hand, if you're gonna say that, all the rest of the unions support Kamala Harris. So by your logic, if we're going for unions and the common guy, then you should vote for Kamala Harris.
Quick reminder, guys, if you don't mind smashing that like button, it would be enormously helpful. And also subscribe to the channel if you are getting value from this. Let's get back to the video.
Yeah, but the interesting thing here is the momentum. We see a shift. We see Kamala Harris going out with Liz Cheney. We see Kamala Harris trying to appeal to the Bush Republican. And we see Trump picking J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance, if you guys remember, he was hated by the elites. J.D. Vance talked about family policy, about tariffs. He actually sometimes argued against tax cuts. J.D. Vance is the most populist figure that we've had in a presidential ticket in a while, with Donald Trump included. The momentum is there. The working class is moving in that direction. And actually, I believe that if you want to influence our politics into a working class direction, the Republican Party is the vehicle. My argument here, and I understand, I think you have a point. When you look at different elites within the country, of course, there's two major parties. Some elites are going to side with one party, some with another. But have you ever noticed that the elites that rely on domestic labor are the ones that support the Republican Party? It's people that make a lot of money with oil. It's, folks that want to expand in the United States of America. Folks that don't mind the tariffs that much. The people that are arguing against Donald Trump, the people that are throwing billions against Donald Trump, are the people that are concerned with the tariffs because they're not concerned about the American people. They're not concerned about industrial policy. They don't want meaningful jobs. They don't care about people committing suicide more than ever before in our entire history, more than the Great Depression, where we were 3 times poorer back then. Why are people killing themselves so much now? Reality is that America is destroying itself, and these elites backing Democrats are the ones that are yielding this self-destruction, this self-immolation, I must say.
So that's a really good point, and I haven't even thought about it from this perspective before. When you think about who the alleged elites are all supporting, and when you have people like Elon Musk who do a lot of business inside of America, they're supporting Donald Trump because Donald Trump is the candidate that wants to protect American businesses, which is exactly what he should be doing to have a thriving domestic economy. And then the elites and the corporations who support the Democrats and who hate the ideas of tariffs are the exact same people who outsource all of their manufacturing to places like China and Mexico and other far cheaper places, and then ship them to America and undercut all of the American companies. I mean, who do you think corporations like Nike are going to be supporting that have all of their goods made in China? And then when we think about the corporate elites, the billionaires that the Democrats are just rallying against all the time, well, how do you explain that you are being supported by Amazon, Google, Apple, Microsoft, Bloomberg, Comcast, Salesforce, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, Disney, Starbucks, Netflix, Goldman Sachs, and the list goes on and on? Tell me again who the party of the billionaire elites is. I mean, just so laughable. Give me a break with the "but the billionaires" tears. And moving on now, where young JP continues to play chess whilst his opponent is playing checkers.
So JP, look, if I thought JD Vance and Trump were actual populists, I'd back them. Bernie Sanders was an actual populist. I loved it, backed him. I don't want the establishment of either party. But what kind of a populist says, let's give a $2 trillion tax cut to the corporations? What kind of populist says, hey, oil companies, give me $1 billion in campaign finance and I'll deregulate you, I'll give you more tax cuts. I mean, this is out and out corruption, and it has nothing to do with, it's the exact opposite of populism to give giant corporate tax cuts. How could you not see that?
You're fixating on that individual policy. And again,
yeah, it's a $2 trillion policy
within the Republican Party that agree with you here. But what I want to focus on here, which is important, is the reality is that you cannot just focus on that. You got to focus on the entire economy. If there's domestic deregulation and you incentivize domestic production, you increase the supply, therefore lowering inflation, while you focus on battling the externalization of markets in an increasingly globalized world where the world is increasingly transactional and the US is not. Every country applies tariffs, and we're one of the only countries in the world that goes, you know what? Actually, no tariffs is better. Free markets, free markets, free markets. My question is, if it's that easy, if free markets are the best, why aren't all the countries in the world doing it? Why is the US the only one that's like free markets, free markets, free markets? And reality is because the mega billionaires, actually like the Koch brothers, Bernie Sanders used to agree with me here, and I'm sure you did too. They like not having tariffs. They don't care that much about some corporate tax rates. They don't care that much about paying a little more in taxes. They make billions from externalizing labor, from making the Chinese build cheap goods. And meanwhile, Americans are jobless, they're suffering, and again, they're committing suicide in massive rates. And the people that are talking about this, the people that are actually innovating, when you read the American Conservative, the American Mind, and these publications, when you read what J.D. Vance was used to write and now talks about, they actually have a policy. They actually have a vision that looks at the complete picture. And to look at the complete picture, you must deal with the world first, not just, oh, tax cuts, tax cuts. Tax cuts are not like increasing tax is not the most populist policy. I would agree. I would actually argue tariffs are very populist.
Yeah, 76% of Americans believe that corporations have too much monopoly power and are using it to abuse the average American. They're 100% right. And Donald Trump says, yeah, let's deregulate them and give them more tax cuts to empower them to continue corporate rule and abuse us. We're in a fascinating, bizarro world where now the right wing is against free markets. So that's fascinating and interesting.
Supporting Trump, then most billionaires support Kamala Harris. You talk about Elon Musk. Elon Musk is the exception.
Okay, so JP, so as I explained earlier, we're #1 in energy production. So the idea that Biden and Obama and Harris didn't drill enough is absurd. You've got to admit that that's absurd. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's absurd. Second of all, that goes into a giant global market. So let me ask you guys specific questions about that. So we give about $30 billion in subsidies every year to the oil companies. What the hell are we doing that for? They're the most profitable companies in the world. Why does ExxonMobil need my money? And Donald Trump says, no, give it to them. Well, what kind of populist is this? And why? He says, because they give me a lot of money. I mean, Jesus Christ, it's open corruption. He's just putting a for sale sign up. That's not a populist, that's a fake populist. And look, I don't understand why you guys can't see the con, right? So the guy, he runs a fake university, he runs a fake charity, he has to pay $25 million fine for his fake university and $2 million fine for his fake charity. He uses the money to buy a 6-foot portrait of himself and pay his legal bills. And you don't think that maybe he's conning you and that he's not actually a populist and he's just looking out for Elon Musk and Jeff Yaz and the Adelsons and the oil companies that are giving him money? I mean, how could you not see it? He even says it.
Cenk, you're a really smart guy. You went to UPenn like the former president. And I think you understand that reality is that you can talk about subsidies and you know, I see people on the left do this all the time. They go like, they're subsidizing Tesla, they're subsidizing the oil companies.
Yeah.
And again, when you look at the global picture, reality is that our biggest geopolitical competitor has tremendous amounts of an ability to afford concessionary spending. They have a huge centralized government, and they subsidize their companies like crazy. And they don't only do this within their own markets, but they do this externally. They do this in Mexico, they do this in Latin America, they do this everywhere else. So if the US government is not subsidizing our own companies, if the US government is now using import substitution in its industrialization to some degree, then that's not beneficial for our national security. There's indeed some areas of our economy that the United States government should incentivize. And I think the oil sector is one of those. R&D, technology, innovation, more broadly speaking, the US government has a role. So I always think it's funny because it's like, oh my God, the US government is giving so much money to Tesla. If we don't give that much money to Tesla, if we don't incentivize our company, do you think we're gonna win against China? And
so
then what
JP, let's break that down.
For the US?
Let's break that down. So now you're saying we should subsidize our companies just like communist China does.
Yeah,
interesting.
That's exactly exactly what I'm saying. To some degree, again.
All right, we're just in amazing times. I'm just noting it for the record.
So pretty disingenuous there by Cenk. I think JP might be trolling a little bit.
Just like communist China does.
Yeah,
but I mean, just because China does something and China call themselves communists doesn't make everything that they do wrong. If Xi Jinping likes chocolate, does that make chocolate bad? If the Chinese Communist Party, for example, wants to have strong borders, does that make them wrong because they're the Chinese Communist Party? No. Anyways, other countries around the world, as JP said, use tariffs, and often to the detriment of the United States. If you think about countries like Germany, France, South Korea, Japan, these countries, because of the Marshall Plan after World War II, when America was trying to help them rebuild, have massive taxes on the United States, which is meant to help their economy grow. Well, since World War II, these countries have come out of that, and they're actually doing pretty well for themselves now, but they're still on the gravy train, whilst America is in a steep decline. They're literally taking the United States for a ride. Same with China, but Trump's the only one who has the balls to come along and say, hey, no. And for another good example, in terms of subsidizing and supporting big corporations in your country, if it is beneficial to your country, is South Korea. South Korea have a system where they have massive corporations called kaibols. And because all of the agricultural opportunities are all in the northern part of the Korean peninsula, they need to do this. So they've got companies like LG, Samsung, and Hyundai, and the government will basically put all of their eggs in these big corporations' basket because this is what makes their economy thrive, and this is what makes them competitive on the world stage. Now, obviously, very different economic setup to the United States, but it is an example of a country who looks after these big companies, and it actually is a mutually beneficial relationship that they have, rather than just trashing the billionaires all of the time and chasing them out of the country, because we've also got examples of that. We've got countries like Cuba. We can see what happened to Cambodia in the 1970s, and the list goes on and on and on. So good point there by JP, bit of food for thought. Let's move on to the bit now about immigration.
Before we move on, I wanted to talk about immigration. What's going on? Immigration is the biggest issue, and we cannot talk about Trump without immigration. And reality is that if you care about the working class, you should care about immigration.
Yeah.
Right?
So one thing at a time, real quick on JD Vance. You're right, we're running out of time, so I'll just say this and then we'll move to immigration. He was good on Lena Khan. He's been terrible on everything else. Loves corporate power, loves corporate giveaways, loves corporate tax cuts, loves corporate deregulation. Financed entirely by Peter Thiel, who's a massive pro-corporate power guy. So it's all fake. Again, I'm so frustrated you guys can't see it. Now, in terms of immigration, it did spike in the Biden years, that's definitely true. And it was both because of two different factors. One is some lax enforcement. So I don't fight that. I think that was an issue. But also because of massive issues in Venezuela, Peru, and other countries that did not send a lot of immigrants before, but sent millions because of the turmoil in those countries. And so that's also true. Can you acknowledge that?
No, I agree. It's true. I don't agree with the particularities of some of the South American countries. Reality is that part of the reason why the flow of Venezuelan migrants has increased, and I know a lot about this topic. I have family in Venezuela, and I read extensively on the issue. It's not because the situation there got worse. The poverty rate has remained the same in the last 10 years. It's about supply. Reality is that there are incentives to come to America illegally. There are incentives to just cross the border, and those incentives weren't there. That infrastructure. I was talking to the former top Pentagon official for Trump in the Western Hemisphere, and he told me a phrase that I thought was really funny. He told me, he said it in Spanish. He said, "The United States has become the coyotes of choice," and I think that's true. The U.S. government is the most responsible for illegal immigrants coming here. We have all the incentives. We open our arms. Then they come here. Many of them commit crime. Many of them compete with our native population. Many of them drive wages down. Many of them make the housing, not very good. And then we turn around and we go like, actually, Democrats do this. Actually, we care about the border. Secure the border. Come on now. Come on, Cenk. Like, you guys don't.
So JP, couple of things there. Number one, I hate the gangs that are coming over, and I think we should be tougher on the criminal gangs. At least we're starting to get a little bit tougher now, and I like that. On the other hand, undocumented immigrants commit only half the crime on average of natural-born citizens. So under your logic, we should be kicking out the natural-born citizens because they're such rampant criminals.
I mean, there's something that you missed there. Maybe this is not a very sophisticated thought, but have you ever wondered that the fact that they're here illegally and we don't know who they are makes it a little hard to like document?
No, when they commit a crime, we document it perfectly well. I think
your viewers could be very intuitive here. What do you think?
No, JP, when they commit a crime, they get booked, so it's perfectly documented.
If they get catched.
And yeah, also, I know, but they also don't catch natural-born citizens either when they commit crimes.
By definition, they all cross the border illegally. Like their first step into the United States literally was was criminal because they're illegal immigrants.
Yeah, no, that's fair, and you can say, hey, I don't like that they came in undocumented, no problem, right? But if we're talking about crime that we're really worried about, again, this is the demagoguing that I think is not at all helpful. So when Donald Trump says, oh, they're eating cats and dogs, that's terrible because it's not true, and you're getting people to hate Haitians for no reason. Talking about the poisoning the blood of our country, that's terrible. That's fascist talk. Don't do that. It's okay to say, hey, we should have boundaries. We should have certain rules to prevent undocumented immigrants from crossing. And we can have a debate about what those rules should be. But when you start spreading hatred about immigrants and then talking about how they're criminals, but wait a minute, like I said, the criminals that we catch are perfectly documented, and natural-born citizens commit twice as much crime on average as undocumented immigrants. So the idea of kicking the natural-born citizens out based on crime is of course absurd. So don't, like, using crime there is a false narrative, and you could tell because it's just not true that they commit more crime. And so when they cherry pick one or two crimes that are terrible, and then they go, oh my God, look at all these criminals. Can you not see how that's demagoguery? And we're not having a reasonable conversation on how much immigration we should have and what our rules should be. We're demonizing immigrants.
That's blatant reductionism. Like, reality is Americans know this, and that's why the majority of Americans agree with me, and likely why Trump is going to win. Of course, illegal immigration causes a lot of crime. Of course, it brings a lot of drugs into this country. Of course, illegal immigration is a big problem. This like cherry-picked fact from like probably a liberal think tank that like, actually, the illegal immigrants don't commit less crime than the native-born population. Again,
JP,
we all know that's not. We all know that's not true. Maybe I'm an anti-intellectual here, but I listen to that fact and I'm like, yeah, I don't buy it, and also I don't care. Even if that were true, I wouldn't care because it's not just about crime; it's about everything else. And again, I'm counting some other things that maybe they're not counting as crimes, like crossing the border illegally into our country, and like all the drugs that come in, many of them of people that we never catch.
Yeah. So listen, JP,
we don't know who the criminal is. But it's true with violent crime. You're right. Like with violent crime, if you kill a person and we catch you, then we can do some econometrics and we can add the numbers. But it's hard to do numbers with illegal immigrants. That's why it's a problem.
Not really. I got to go to Mike Lindell next. But listen, brother, don't take the anti-intellectual stance. I got into a huge fight with leftists over criminal gangs from Venezuela. So I don't want any criminals in here. I want to kick them out. I don't like criminal gangs taking over apartment complexes or apartment units. I don't want it, right? And the American people don't want it. But we also want to treat immigrants with decency. That's what the overwhelming majority of Americans say. We have to have reasonable rules, but be decent. So you've got to acknowledge facts. They're not criminals and rapists more so than other people. They're not poisoning the blood of this country. Immigrants are what made this country. You just have to have reasonable rules around it.
You're doing it again with the rapist line. Like, he's not talking about like the average Mexican. Again, like,
okay, well,
my name is Juan Pablo. My name is Juan Pablo. Like, if he was calling me a rapist, I'd be like, Donald Trump, I hate you.
Okay,
but like,
all right,
he wasn't. Not true.
Okay, well, he definitely said criminals are rapists. That's like one of those most famous lines of all time.
I am so glad that JP brought that bit up there, because this is something that does not get brought up enough. And I like the self-deprecating humor as well, because it lands the absurdity of the point very well. Cenk is citing something here that the liberals love to cite. He's saying that natural-born citizens, they commit double the amount of crime than the illegal immigrants do. So therefore, should we deport the natural-born citizens? I mean, this is the dumbest point that they make, and they make a lot of dumb points. But I mean, you can call them undocumented if you want, but the correct term is illegal alien or illegal immigrant, whatever you want to go with. But by definition, and maybe I'm also slow and stupid like JP in this situation, but if you're an illegal immigrant, then that would make you a criminal. I mean, that would make 100% of them criminals. So, I mean, if my math is mathing correctly, if natural-born citizens are twice as likely to be criminals. Does that mean that 200% of natural born citizens are criminals? But I mean, as much as I'm being a bit tongue in cheek here, this sort of statistic that Cenk is referring to here, that the liberals love to refer to, which I'm not even going to look into because I don't need to lose any more brain cells, is obviously just a completely contrived statistic that is designed for the express purpose to give the Democrats a talking point because they know that their position on immigration is so indefensible. And then obviously the point that Cenk was making about, oh, should we deport the citizens? It's just such a basic category error.
Idea of kicking the natural born citizens out based on crime.
No, you don't deport citizens because they're citizens, but you should deport the illegal immigrant criminals because they're from somewhere else. They're not from the United States. And last point, yes, many people who come across that border won't be detained. There is no doubt millions and millions of illegal immigrants in the country at the moment. So whatever number that they have come up with in their little liberal think tanks about the number of crimes committed by illegals is bound to be way, way higher. So guys, I mean, well done there to JP. Absolutely schooled Cenk. So good to see. If you guys would like to check out all my links, you can go below. If you would like to like the video, that'd be awesome. Subscribe to the channel. And also, if you'd like to watch another one, right here. Till next time, I'm Jake. This is RattlesnakeTV, keeping you armed and dangerous.